Lucio never imagined that a simple old book could change his life forever. He found it in a small antique shop, dusty and hidden on a dark shelf. The cover had no title, just a strange symbol embossed in gold. Something about the book drew him in, as if it were calling to him. When he got home, Lucio couldn't resist. He opened the cover and started reading. The words seemed ordinary at first, but soon he noticed something strange. The pages began to move, rearranging the words in an indecipherable pattern. The story he was reading vanished and was replaced by something darker, more threatening. On the first page, the main character was just an ordinary man, but soon he found himself in increasingly desperate situations. Every time Lucio turned a page, things got more sinister. The protagonist of the book started facing grotesque beings, creatures that didn't belong to the real world. And with each page turned, the story dragged him deeper into that nightmare. Lucio tried to close the book but couldn't. His hands seemed glued to the paper, as if the book had a mind of its own. He felt a chill in his stomach, a sense that something was wrong. Yet he couldn't stop reading. The words beckoned him, entangled him in a web of terror he couldn't escape. When he finally managed to close the book, sweaty and with his heart racing, he placed it back on the shelf, but something was different. Something was moving at the corner of his vision. The symbol on the cover of the book glowed faintly, as if it was still alive, waiting for the moment to continue. Lucio felt a chill run down his spine. He knew the book still had more to show. The following day, Lucio tried to forget about the book. He went on with his life, convincing himself that it was just a strange coincidence. But something was off. Every time he looked at the shelf, the book seemed to call out to him. The symbol on the cover, faint as it was, seemed to pulse with a life of its own. It was like it was waiting for him to open it again. Unable to shake the feeling, Lucio gave in. He grabbed the book, his fingers trembling as he opened it once more. This time the pages felt heavier, as if they had a weight that wasn't there before. As he read, he realized the story had changed again. The protagonist wasn't just fighting monsters anymore. Now, he was battling his own fears, his deepest insecurities. Lucio's heart raced as he recognized some of these fears. They weren't just part of the story. They were his fears, his demons, manifesting on the pages in twisted forms. The protagonist was now chasing shadows, desperately trying to escape an unknown force that seemed to know his every move. And with each new page, the force was getting closer to him, its presence suffocating and undeniable. Lucio tried to stop, but the book wouldn't let him. The words seemed to pull him deeper, faster. The more he read, the more the lines between reality and fiction blurred. He could almost hear the sound of the protagonist's footsteps echoing in his own mind, as if the two of them were becoming one. Suddenly, he looked up, startled. The room around him had changed. It wasn't the same as it had been when he started reading. The walls felt closer, the air heavier, as if the book had somehow altered the space around him. He glanced at the book in his hands, and the pages seemed to shimmer as though they were alive. Lucio closed the book violently, gasping for breath. He could feel his pulse racing, but when he placed the book down again, the symbol on the cover had shifted. It was no longer just a simple shape. It now seemed to be staring at him, as though it were alive, waiting for him to make the next move. Lucio couldn't bring himself to open the book again, but the pull was undeniable. Each night, he found himself staring at the shelf, the book beckoning him. He had to know more. What was this book? Why did it change every time he read it? Why did it seem to control his reality? One evening, with trembling hands, he gave in. He opened the book, and this time, the story was different. The protagonist was now trapped in a dark, empty room, much like his own. The air was thick with dread, and the walls seemed to close in with every passing moment. As Lucio read, he realized the story was not just about fear. It was about control. The protagonist was no longer trying to escape the monsters. Now he was trying to escape the book itself. The pages felt warmer to the touch, almost as if they were burning his fingers. And then, something even more disturbing happened. The words on the page began to shift in real time. The protagonist in the book started to look directly at him, as if aware of his presence. Lucio froze. His heart skipped a beat as he read the words, "You shouldn't have opened this book, Lucio." A cold sweat broke out on his forehead. He looked around the room. Everything seemed normal, but the air felt heavier. His breath came in shallow gasps. Was the book aware of him? Could it somehow know his name? Desperate to stop, Lucio slammed the book shut and pushed it away, but the room seemed to hum with a strange energy. The book didn't just affect the story anymore. It was affecting his reality, changing the world around him. He couldn't ignore it anymore. It was as though the boundaries between the pages and his life were fading. As he stumbled to his feet, trying to escape the suffocating atmosphere, he heard a voice, not from the book, but from behind him. It was low, raspy, and chilling. "You're mine now." Lucio whipped around, his heart pounding, but the room was empty. Nothing was there. Nothing except the book, still open on the table, the pages flickering as though alive. Lucio couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The book had stopped being a mere object. It was now a part of his life. Every corner of his room seemed to pulse with an energy he couldn't escape. He hadn't slept in days, the weight of the book's power keeping him awake, unable to rest. He felt like he was being watched, as though the book was always there, observing his every move. Unable to resist any longer, Lucio opened the book again. This time, the protagonist was no longer running from monsters or trying to escape a nightmare. No, the protagonist was the one writing the story now. He had taken control of the book, and he was using it to manipulate everything around him. Lucio's hands trembled as he read the words. They weren't just affecting the protagonist anymore, they were affecting him. The room around him started to distort. He could feel the walls bending, the air growing thicker. He tried to stand up, but his body refused to obey. It was as if the book had taken over not just his mind, but his very being. "You can't escape, Lucio," the words on the page whispered. The protagonist's eyes on the page turned to meet Lucio's, and then, just like that, the room went dark. A complete, suffocating darkness surrounded him, as if the book had erased all light from his world. He couldn't move, couldn't see, couldn't think. All he could feel was the cold grip of fear tightening around him. Suddenly, the pages of the book began to turn on their own. Each page seemed to pull him deeper into the story, deeper into its world. He could hear the protagonist's voice, now echoing in his mind, urging him to follow. "You have to finish the story, Lucio. You have to know how it ends." He tried to resist, but it was useless. His hand, almost of its own accord, reached for the next page, and as he turned it, everything changed again. The moment Lucio turned the page, the world around him shifted violently. The room, which had once been his safe haven, now felt alien. The walls seemed to close in on him, and the floor beneath his feet started to crack, revealing a deep, endless void. His heart pounded in his chest as he realized that the book had become the key to his reality. Every word, every line, was rewriting everything around him. "This is it," the protagonist's voice echoed from the book, now sounding more like his own thoughts. "You can't stop it now." Lucio tried to scream, but no sound came out. The book's power was overwhelming, drowning him in its twisted grip. The shadows in the corners of the room began to move, creeping toward him like living creatures. He couldn't escape them, no matter how hard he tried. They were made of the same dark energy that emanated from the pages of the book. Desperate, he dropped the book, hoping that removing it from his hands would stop the madness. But the moment it hit the floor, the entire room seemed to collapse. The floor gave way entirely, and Lucio fell, tumbling into an abyss where time and space no longer made sense. He landed hard on cold, uneven ground. When he looked up, he saw a terrifying sight. There were versions of himself, all around him, each one living a different life, each one trapped in a different version of the story. Some were terrified, some were indifferent, but all of them were marked by the book's influence. It had taken pieces of his soul, fragments of his very being, and scattered them across infinite realities. Lucio couldn't understand how or why it had come to this. All he knew was that the book had taken him to the end. The final chapter was always the same. There was no escaping it. As the shadows closed in on him, Lucio realized with a chilling certainty that he was no longer the one reading the story. He was the story, and there would be no escape from the book's control. The last page turned. The story was over. If you enjoyed this tale of terror, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. And if you dare, click the notification bell so you won't miss the next descent into madness. Until then, remember, sometimes the story you're reading is the one that's reading you.